wonder whether people's vibrational frequency was in the food that I was consuming on a regular basis when I opted to have Postmates rather than cooking my own meals. And I'm thinking, whoa, I've dropped a bunch of weight since the quarantine happened. My skin feels clearer, my hair's growing, my nails are growing. These kind of things didn't happen when I was eating store-bought food.
Welcome to the Betty Rocker Show, the place to be to nourish your mind, love your body, and rock your life. Welcome back, Rockstar. It's so great to have you here, and I am thrilled to welcome my dear friend and today's guest, inspirational speaker and emotional empowerment expert, Sarah Prout. She went from living on welfare as a single mother in Australia to now running a successful 7-figure business in Las Vegas, Nevada with the love of her life. Sarah is an award-winning entrepreneur, podcast host, author of the book Dear Universe, and mother of 4. And in 2019, a video produced by Gold Coast sharing Sarah's story went absolutely viral and has now been viewed by over 57 million people around the world. Sarah, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you're here. It's been way too long that we have been able to deeply connect.
I know, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I'm so honored to be a guest on your show.
Oh, well, it is an honor to have you, my friend, and so excited to get to have a conversation that all of our beautiful listeners can participate in, because our conversations are always so rich and powerful. It's like we're doing some kind of magic together.
Yeah, and it's always been like that. Since the moment we met, there was some magic that happened. The universe really liked the fact that we connected, and it's been a beautiful friendship ever since.
I can't agree more. And speaking of, you just said my favorite word, universe. And ever since you wrote Dear Universe, I think not just me and the people that love you know your amazing gifts. Like, the world is now exposed to your amazing gifts. And of course, if you guys haven't checked out Dear Universe yet, this is a really good time to get to know the author and see what you think about this book. Because Sarah, how many copies have sold and how many languages has it been translated into?
Oh my gosh. I don't know exactly how many copies it sold, but there are at least 5 or 6 translations now in different languages, which is such an honor, because it just shows that there are people from all over the world that can benefit from the message of Dear Universe.
Yeah, which is in the byline of this book, you guys, is 200 mini meditations for instant manifestations. And I love that you chose that particular phrase, because it's really a collection of true stories about lessons that you've had in your life and meditations that you've created to help people manifest their true desires. And when you mentioned before that it was, we always think back to how we met. I always think back to that day, that this is after we had met, but we were sitting together at that restaurant in Vegas. I had just flown in to stay with you and Sean. Sean is Sarah's husband. And, and I knew you already and loved you, but I didn't know your real story or like the whole story. Mm-hmm. And no one will ever know the whole story, but the parts of your story that the parts of your story that really show up in this book that served as the trial that you've been through that has informed a lot of like the work that you do in the world. I really understood it at last. And I was wondering if you'd tell us the story. Would you take us back to that moment when we were sitting around that funny diner table?
I remember it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it was a few
years
ago now. Yeah, that was an interesting time. So I remember, and it's interesting now because the story has changed over time. How I deliver it, the meaning behind it, and the impact that it's had on various different lives. So for those of you that are listening right now, my story is that I left a 10-year marriage of domestic violence with absolutely nothing. I had 2 suitcases, 2 kids, and over $30,000 worth of debt. And I was recovering from the emotional trauma of being in a very toxic relationship, which took so many years to finally begin to heal from. And I believe it's only really in the last 18 months that I've really done the deep emotional work to rise above it, to be able to serve people at a whole new level.
And what you said before about how you feel like the way that you tell the story has changed,
Mm-hmm.
I can really relate to that. And I see why you said that now, because after you go through deep work, you go through a transformation yourself, and the frame that you put around your story can change. And
Mm-hmm.
so I see that, well, the facts may remain the same. The
Yeah.
way that you talk about the journey and the way that you talk about the lessons has probably transformed in some ways that probably serve people even more.
Yeah, it really has. And it started to take a different shape when I did the Goalcast video last year. And that's had over 57 million views. I mean, it's more than the population of Australia, Hong Kong, and Sweden combined, which is absolutely crazy. But what was very meaningful about that release of the video was that nearly every third comment was from a woman or some men that can relate to being in a situation of domestic violence. And so I realized that, okay, this is just one part of a much bigger framework. It's all very well to share my story and to come across almost as a victim. And I thought, okay, it's time now for me to switch that narrative and really take ownership and responsibility to empower others to guide their energy and guide their emotions. And what's beautiful about that is that it really ties in so nicely with teaching manifestation and mindfulness.
Yes. And I remember some of the really vivid imagery from the story you told about the fire,
Mm-hmm.
about about
Well,
having
it nearly became a fire, but yeah.
wait, tell me the story again, because I'm
So
obviously not remembering the details.
you get the they used fire as the visuals, but there was never actually a fire, which is so interesting because that has some unintended consequences of people making assumptions, just like that of what actually happened. So I came back from a meeting that I had in the city one night, and my ex-husband was really angry with me for different reasons. I'd had an affair, and I admitted to that. So we're getting really deep and raw right now, just expressing everything. And he was looking after the kids, and he had piled up all of my clothes in the backyard and poured gasoline on them. And he was rampaging around the house looking for some matches because he was just going to light the whole thing up. And I mean, the thing about the Goalcast video and my story is that it can't be told in just a 6-minute narrative. I mean, there was over 2.5 hours of storytelling behind that. And then the editors pieced it together. So there are a lot of gaps. There's a lot of assumptions, but the the opportunity is to guide people back that resonate with the story on how they actively participate in the resistance, in the back and forth that happens. And I'm not saying that anybody deserves to be in a situation of domestic violence, but it really is the thing that got me out of that situation was taking responsibility for my own happiness, my own financial freedom at the time, even though I was living on less than $10 a day, and realizing that I'm a sovereign being. And I think a lot of people, especially someone like me that came from a background of having divorced parents that were always fighting about money, to not feeling very good about myself. And I do believe that in the video, the message of at the very end is, if you be the love you believe you deserve, it will change your world. And you know this, Brie, because you walk this talk and you've taught so many thousands upon thousands of people exactly the same thing, that we do need to take responsibility for how we show up mentally, physically, spiritually, and that is really the only path forward if you want to have a life of meaning, of joy, of authenticity, and of connection. Otherwise, you're just wasting this beautiful life force that you've been given.
Yes, and I think what's so powerful about not only you telling the story about the story is the way that you just took ownership of, like, you didn't say I was a victim of this domestic violence. You immediately took ownership of, my husband and I had strife in our relationship partially because of things that I did. You immediately took that responsibility. And like we both know, violence is never the answer. Violence against those who are weaker than us, violence, it's never going to be justified, right? But
Mhm.
at the same time, we can't constantly blame other people for life situations that we've been in. We have to also look to what was our part. And that's part of the most powerful part of the healing and in forgiveness is
Mhm.
what was my responsibility? What was the gold? What were the lessons that I was able to gain from this experience in my life? How did it serve me and support me and set me up for the next part of who I wanted to become?
This is a really deep discussion, and we could probably talk for hours about this. But I think, especially as a storyteller, as somebody that uses narrative to illustrate a point, I've had to get really good at not telling stories that are not my own to tell, because there's a real danger in that. And even though I wrote Dear Universe 2 years ago, I still feel like now, today, I have a different level of maturity. And so I really look forward to the next book and how I can guide that narrative, because what I didn't realize, with 57 million people seeing your story and perceiving it with assumptions of where were her parents, or this guy's a monster, he needs to die, like it's their disowned parts of themselves that can't see, hey, it takes two to tango. No smoke without a fire, right? And the unintended consequences of seeing how it impacted my children's lives. I didn't think about that. I had like a fleeting thought of, no, I just want to do this to get the message out there. I didn't see it until afterwards of how it impacted them. And they love it. They're really proud of me for doing that, for being a voice for women that perhaps are unable to find their voices right now. But then there was my ex-husband who had his own thoughts to bring to that. And I could only imagine he would have been humiliated. He would have been ashamed, the depths of shame that he went through. And so there was this beautiful gift that he gave me when he called me out on these things, saying, why are you sharing this so publicly? He gave me the blessing to write Dear Universe, but he didn't give me the blessing to have 57 million views. And so we work together to have a conscious conversation where we're at a point now where we can talk about this and realize that it both made us the people that we are today. And he's a completely different person, living his own life to the beat of his own drum. And I wish him well. And that's what I want for other people that have been either victims or they're survivors of any kind of abuse, whether it's verbal, physical, emotional, financial, whatever it is. If we can just view life through the lens of compassion and empathy, then we can make some radical changes in the world. And that's really needed right now.
You've reached a point now in the evolution of your journey where you're I don't know, just that self-acceptance piece. That's just true freedom.
So good. It's so
True
great.
freedom.
It really is. And I think there was some magic to turning 40 as well. I don't know what it was. It's like, oh, I'm 40. I made it this far. I can do anything now. And there's this other concept that I've been teaching a lot lately, which I've titled the coma of convenience. Because I just mentioned before that every night I have a ritual. We go in the jacuzzi, which is about 104 degrees, and then we jump in the cold pool, which is really freezing. I mean, it's just getting warmer now, but it's been like an ice bath. So it's such a beautiful contrast. And we say affirmations, my husband and I, when we're in the water together. And I have this crystal clarity. And during that time, I was like, oh, I'm waking up from a coma of convenience. So currently being in this quarantine with the 2020 pandemic, there's no house cleaner right now. So I'm cleaning my house for the first time in 4 years. So that's radical self-responsibility. And I'm actively participating in my house being clean, cooking my meals more because I'm not ordering as much. And you know a lot about this in inspiring people about food prep and preparing for the future. You've already been teaching people this for such a long time. There is not a better time than right now to really incorporate that into our daily practice, because the coma of convenience is like you can make a phone call or push a button on your phone and you can have ice cream on your doorstep within half an hour if you want to. But what if you don't? What if you can't? And I'm even raising my kids for the first time in their lives because I've had a nanny. And now I'm thinking, well, why do I need to do that? Why would I? And I'm not judging anybody if they do have nannies or outside help or things like that. But for me, I didn't realize how much of a beautiful balance it would bring the reality. So like I was saying earlier, Brie, I'm twice as productive in half the time. So it's like win-win.
And you're twice as productive in half the time because you've decided what your priorities are. You and Sean always say to me, I had an inner knowing about something, and I love that I say that now because of you. And that inner knowing piece, that inner wisdom that we all have, that deep intuition that we all carry as human beings, it's a piece that sometimes can get dulled out.
Mm-hmm.
It within the coma, the convenience coma, is one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that dulls that sound of our inner voice. And there are a lot of routines that we bring into our modern life that can really dull the sound of our own intuition. So,
Yeah.
as a manifestation expert and as a worldwide speaker on these topics, what are some of the things that we can do to tap back into the wisdom of our heart and our soul? And what can we do? Yeah.
I love that question. Oh, it all begins again with personal responsibility and self-care. Everything boils down to self-care. And I think getting into a really good ritual with getting up, making sure that how you start your day is how you set the tone for the rest of your day, sometimes even for the rest of your week, and being open to a change of schedule. I think being open to, actually, I don't think, I know that being open to all possibilities is really that point of magic where it sparks, where you have creative ideas flowing to you, where you can take inspired action if you feel guided to. But it's like a muscle. And I teach my students this all the time, that you can't just say, well, I'm intuitive. You actually have to build that strength just like a muscle. And you have to do it consistently, and you have to feed it the right proteins to build it up after you break it down. And the breakdown usually happens in the form of feeling sad or anxious or feeling the full spectrum of emotions. And then you can show up and build confidence in what those whispers are telling you to do next. And it's usually, hey, maybe you should have a green smoothie, or hey, maybe you need to go to bed an hour earlier tonight, or hey, here's a great idea for a blog post. Get in front of your computer and write. It's just learning how to tune into those whispers. And the more you do that, the more you can fill yourself up to be of service to others. And this is extremely important for the healthcare workers out there, that even if they just took 5 minutes a day for meditation or for some kind of recalibration that connects them to their hearts, they can be of service to somebody else. Because this energy, the energy of heart space, of filled up cups, of soul frequency it's really, I don't want to use the word infectious right now, but it is. It is something
It's
that
the kind of infection we need, Sarah.
it is. It really is. And I wrote a blog post about this with a few of these phrases, that our intentions should not be in lockdown. Our dreams should not be in lockdown. Our self-care shouldn't be in lockdown. We're placing so much emphasis on the outside world not being open. But what if the world is not going back to a new normal? I don't believe it will. I believe that this is a next level, that the universe has been decluttering, saying, hey, everybody, stay inside. And what decluttering does is it creates a space of something new. It's ditching the old and making space for the new. And so there's a new normal of manifesting, which I'm really excited to share, where I think that there's a different frequency going on, where if we set intentions, the universe is responding to it at a different pace and frequency, because there's not as much noise in the outside world. So our intuition is heightened. And we were saying just before that our dreams are deep at the moment. Like the level of the vivid nature of my dreams is insane right now. It's almost like 3D, just lucid dreaming almost.
And I'm experiencing the same thing. Just for our listeners, Sarah and I were talking just before we started that we both wear the Oura ring to track our sleep. Yeah, sleeping, and we're geek out over it. But anyway, yes, go back. I'm just saying, like, we both are having intensely vivid dreams right now.
Yeah, and I think that my intuition's on fire for the first time in a long time. And I think I was talking to my Manifesting Academy students about this morning, because I had the thought, I wonder whether people's vibrational frequency was in the food that I was consuming on a regular basis when I opted to have Postmates rather than cooking my own meals. And I'm thinking, whoa, I've dropped a bunch of weight since the quarantine happened. It's my skin feels clearer, my hair's growing, my nails are growing. These kind of things didn't happen when I was eating store-bought food. And so it's like, okay, these things have a tiny impact on the overall levels of well-being. And so to answer your question, the things that we can do is pay attention to those subtle energetic frequencies of what contribute to us holistically.
And you've almost now ritualized aspects of your self-care that you used to outsource. And so
Yeah.
by cooking more, by cleaning more, by you've taken radical responsibility for the cleanliness and organization of your space around you. You are now in charge of that. That's almost a ritual in
Yeah.
itself of like how you're going to organize your space for the day, how you're telling your family what they need to clean up after themselves so that everyone's a part of it, how you're cooking for the family more. You're making more conscious choices about what to eat, not just what's convenient. You have to think it through. You have to
Yeah.
prepare it, and probably getting your family involved too.
Yeah.
And as if I know you, and I've been at your house watching Thomas help make food and Olivia
Yeah.
help. So I know that. And it's just so beautiful to hear you talk about it like that, because those simple choices and those rituals and waking up from that, I love the phrase about the convenience coma, because I think I'm probably going to just have to remember that, because it's just so powerful. And the way that those choices and that rhythm, that those rituals that we've chosen to have in our day-to-day life impact things like our sleep, our stress levels,
Mhm.
the way that that's, and those, and stress. I mean, if you're stressed, your body is releasing stuff that's creating an acidic skin environment that's going to make you break out more. It's going to upset your digestive flow. So you're
Mhm.
going to be storing more food as fat. You're going to be, all these things happen when we're excessively stressed. When we don't sleep well, same things happen. We don't actually produce as much muscle because human growth hormone doesn't elevate at the peak hour when it's supposed to.
Mhm.
We're storing more body fat. Our metabolism is more sluggish, right? So all of these things, like you said, it's an opportunity, if it's possible for it to be an opportunity for us to remember the things that really do make us healthy, balanced human beings
Mm.
living a healthy, balanced life, not a life, not this fast food life of convenience, which we
Yeah.
have the option. I love that you mentioned earlier, flexibility, because to be able to adapt, to enjoy things as they're available to us, but to rely on them constantly, it's like a coma for the soul of.
That's what I was doing. I was like, it would get to 6 o'clock and I'd been at work for 10 hours. And it's like, oh, okay, let's just order something on Postmates and then not think about the impact that that was having on my body. Uh, and and not only that, the community connection, as you mentioned, I've got this beautiful kitchen right now. It's so gorgeous, and I really enjoy being in there, cooking things, and having the family sit around and be able to share stories. And this is the first time in a long time where the six of us have been able to sit down and connect and
I
eat
love
all
it.
the same thing too, which is great. The little kids are at a stage now where we can all eat the same stuff, so it's really good.
So what's the road back? Because things are gonna. I know that we're gonna come into what you called the new normal, but how do we transition from the beautiful lessons and the gifts that we've been given during this time, the gifts you've shared that were about connection with your family, about remembering rituals that actually serve you and have healed your body in many ways, really being more deeply connected. How can we make sure that we hold on to some of those practices coming out of quarantine and don't just revert back? What can we do? Can we set an intention? Can we manifest? Like, what can we do together right now, even on this podcast, to commit to ourselves or to tell the universe that this is
Mm.
our intention? What's the gold that we could mine and take forward? I'm looking for something. Like I'm asking, dear universe, please tell me the answer. This is what I'm asking right now.
I think it boils down to documenting the journey. So,
Hmm.
I will be creating highlights on my Instagram feed to remember this time. I really want to do that because it's the feeling that I love, that feeling of, hey, I may not be able to control what's going on out there in the world, but I can control what's happening in my little nest here. And bringing the joy to that, writing it down, setting that intention. And it's just like you teach, Bree. This isn't a diet. This isn't it's a lifestyle and it's a choice. It's an empowered choice with intention to make the most out of every single day. Do the best you can with what you have. I mean,
I agree.
it's simple, but
And
and
all of this, the simplest things are the most profound. That's right. It's
yeah.
like, yeah. And I was just thinking, like what you just said about journaling, it's so interesting because during quarantine, obviously been cooking a lot more, also been journaling my meals daily, just because I like to look back. And because when I journal what I've eaten, I don't track macros or calories
Mhm.
at this point. Sometimes I'll check in with those things to see how am I doing on the amounts of protein I'm having. Am I making sure to not have too much sugar? But I look I look just writing down my daily meals has been like something that it feels like a gift to myself. I look back and see, look at all the nourishing food I ate. Wow, I had like if I'm having poor sleep or anything, I can look at my food as a sort of a guideline of like, was there something in there that day that maybe created like it's just giving me this deep connection to my body. I've been journaling my workouts. I journal my meals. I have my record of my sleep habits, and I'm also doing my daily meditation. And
Mm,
if I have something to say about that, I'll journal any reflection thoughts after my morning meditation. And that stuff I've really made more of time for all of that every day recently. And
mm,
I want to bring that with me. And it's been because I just feel so connected to myself. And it's really I just feel more productive, more connected, more intuitive, like you said. And I think that journaling piece, even though I didn't think about it until just now, even the fact that I'm writing down what I'm nourishing myself with is a kind of a ritual of self love that I have
mm.
that is really powerful. So, when it comes to rituals, you mentioned earlier that starting the day with a daily ritual or routine is really important. Do you have like a template that you teach your students about how to create their own morning ritual or any types of ritual creation processes that I can swipe as well?
I have been doing what feels good. So I've been waking when my body wakes naturally, which has been awesome. I don't have to take the kids to school or anything like that. So it's like when the babies wake up, the littlest kids, I wake up at the same time. So my body gets the sleep that it needs. I,
Mm.
first thing in the morning, I hug my kids. And my husband's already at work. Sean's already at work. He gets up, he's been getting up before he's been getting up at around 4:30 a.m. most mornings, which is awesome. It's like his body just wakes up with inspiration and he wants to get to work. So I'm like, yeah, this is good. So we kind of trade off times. So I have the first thing in the morning, I have chlorophyll water with 15 drops, which I love doing. And I've really noticed the benefits of having more alkalized water. And then I make my green smoothie probably at around 9 a.m. and I have a black cup of coffee. And so that's really my nutrients in the first few hours of the day. And then I clean and I like to listen to mantras or spiritual music or meditation music while I'm cleaning. Or I like to listen to like more dancey kind of music like Jamiroquai or something like that to get that energy moving because I'm clocking at least 10,000 steps before midday. And that's really good to be, up and down the stairs or folding laundry or steam mopping the floor or just becoming really engaged in that and using the time that I clean as service for my family as mindfulness time, as affirmation. So I do that when I brush my teeth too. It's like, okay, thank you, universe. Thank you, God, whatever name you feel comfortable with. Taking even the smallest things and making them ritualistic. And building on the rituals that you already have. So if it's like, well, I can't do meditations or I can't do affirmations, you brush your teeth twice a day, right? So turn that into your meditation. And that's what you can build upon. It's layering. It's like one thing after the other, one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. And then you'll find that, oh, hey, I've changed a little bit. I'm not as reactive if I am confronted with something that I don't agree with. So you have a choice. It's these choice points that open up. The more you take care of yourself, the more you're able to navigate with more consciousness and intention.
And you said the word intention, you said the magic word. And earlier I was asking you, like, what's a good way that we could maybe come out of this crisis? How can we set our intentions? And you actually have something that like over 500,000 people have used. You have a free intention setting worksheet, right? So we're going to share that in the show notes. Is that a good resource for us, would you say?
Yeah, it's fantastic because it really gets you to feel into what you want to be, do, and have. And think about the long term as well. Because, yes, we don't know what's going to happen with society right now, but we will have one day after the next, right? So we want to make sure that it's as powerful as possible.
Yes. As I'm going through the book every day, the days have a word. There's a word associated with the day, right? And the word I just opened up the book, and the two words staring at me are free and generous.
Free
And
and generous.
love that. And we were talking earlier about the importance of feeling free,
Yeah.
and it says, remember, having sovereignty in your life is the essence of experiencing feeling free. And what you were just talking about cleaning your house. this is something that many of us would frame as a chore. But you said
Mhm.
it's a dedication of service to my family. It gives me an opportunity to get 10,000 steps. I'm using it as a time to do my affirmations. I mean, oh my gosh, you just completely transformed like how housework should feel for you. And
Yeah.
you took total ownership of it. And I absolutely love that. Like, what a gift. Like, I feel like one of the magic, like when I try to describe like what it is that you do, I mean, we know that you're a speaker, an author,
Mhm.
a manifester. We know that you're a coach and you serve people and you create courses and all these things. But like when I think about you, I think of you as a sorceress because I see you doing magic out there, and your magic, like the most elemental spells, the most simple spells, the most simple craft that we offer to the world is this ability to create to frameworks around how we see our lives. And this is why if you're a sorceress and I'm a sorceress and we share magic, this is magic that we both share. This ability to create frameworks. And we had to both start with recreating frameworks for our own lives. And
Mhm.
it's how we were able to overcome violence and trauma from our past. It's how we're able to stand tall and be proud of the women we are. It's how we feel capable of being role models to the people that look up to us and being so
Mhm.
conscious of the language that we use to speak around them. You were talking about the language that we speak about our kids if they're stuck home, from school for a while, and that we want them there, that we find ways to incorporate them into our day. I think a lot with my women about how we talk about our bodies, and I know
Mhm.
that we're very conscious of this too, like how we talk about how we love or don't love ourselves has a big impact on those
Mm.
little listeners, on the
Yeah.
little boys who listen to the moms. How should they perceive a woman and her body, and how does she perceive herself? So that informs how I'm going to talk to her and how I'm going to see women growing up. And the little girl, how am I going to see myself? Am I acceptable? Does my mom accept her body, or does she hate her body? And how am I supposed to look growing up? Um, and am I okay in myself?
Oh
And
my
a
god.
lot of that information comes from how our mom talks to herself, how our mom makes the choices, and how she frames the choices that she makes for herself. Is it an empowered reason why, or is it a place of fear and scarcity? And that's really important to identify. So, what's coming up for you around that?
Oh, my tummy tuck journey.
I was wondering. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, share about that a little bit if you feel like it.
Sure. So, when at my heaviest, I was probably around 200 pounds, and I lost a lot of weight after my pregnancies. Like, I would balloon up and then shrink down and balloon up and shrink down. And with that came a muscle separation. It's called diastasis recti. And you probably know I'm preaching to the choir here with what you know about that. Um, and I had loose skin, and um, it was something that I couldn't accept about myself for nearly 20 years. I mean, my son, well, he's 18, so 18 years. And I really wanted to do something empowering. And I'd made peace with my belly. It's like, okay, I'm nearly 40 years old. I'm okay with this if I don't get it done. And what I didn't tell you, Brie, was that a reality show actually approached me and knew about my stomach because I wrote about it in Dear Universe before I had the operation. And they said, would you be willing to have your operation completely paid for if it's on TV? And I got really like triggered by that. And I'm like, well, no, thanks. I'm good. I'm totally at peace with myself and I'm empowered. And then I started thinking, hmm, what if I did get it done? Does it mean that I don't accept myself? And then I started questioning it because I'd seen other people that had had the operation and it was beautiful. I'd seen other people and it wasn't as good and they didn't like it as much. So I bit the bullet and I had the operation. But what I didn't anticipate, it would take 3 months to heal. 3 months. And I was cutting it fine because I was booked to speak on stage with Tony Robbins and Pitbull in August last year. And I had my tummy tuck on June 23rd. And my wound was opening up. And it's like, this happens to less than, I think, 3% of people, where I don't have an iPod case right now, but it was about the same width as an iPod case. And this is a bit graphic I won't go into gory details.
It's
So I
okay.
had 3 of these holes in my abdomen. I thought it was fine. The pain was excruciating. I nearly got addicted to opioid drugs, which is probably a story for
Wow.
another day, because that's the only way that I could manage the pain. I slept in a chair upright for 3 months. I couldn't look after my kids. I couldn't work. And time was ticking because I had these speaking gigs lined up. And so these 3 wounds, and it was a beautiful lesson. So I went to my surgeon and I said to him, look, hey, what can we do? And he's like, nothing. You just have to wait it out. Because my logical mind's like, hey, I want to stitch these up. But infection likes to grow in places that haven't healed. So I had to manifest the skin back into the incision. And it took a while. So I went on stage in New Jersey at this event with like a big maternity pad over my incision. And I'm like, these people would never know that this is happening right now. But I had to trust the process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's like weight loss or building muscles. It doesn't happen like snap your fingers. You have to work at it. So I was doing healing frequency meditations. I was doing everything that I could to make sure that it healed. And in time, it healed. And I'm so glad that I got it done now because I have core strength for the first time in my adult life. I've never had that. It looks great. It's completely flat. The scar's now healing. And it's, no signs of what happened. But sometimes I kind of go, okay, was it really worth it? Yes. Would I have done it if I knew what I was going to go through? No. But everybody has their own personal journey and something that only they can decide and not hold judgment around. So getting back to how that translated to my little kids, and they're like, well, mommy got her stomach cut off. Why did she do that? If she's in so much pain, wasn't she good enough? What did you do with your tummy, mummy? Your mummy tummy? Does it make you better? Are you prettier? Things like that. And I had to guide the narrative every step of the way, saying this was something that mummy chose to do for herself. And I did. I made my choice. I'm really glad that I did that. And now it's a process of reaccepting my body. So I still have to do exactly the same thing that I did when I had 10 pounds of loose skin on my stomach. I have to do exactly the same thing. I have to accept a new body, which is an opportunity. So it's been quite the journey.
Wow. I am so thankful that you shared that with me in that way and that you told that full story like that, and that we got to talk about it with the impact on your family as well as on yourself, because it's a lot. There's a lot of moving parts around these choices that we make. And
yeah, it was such a crazy time. And I love my plastic surgeon because he must deal with some of the most difficult women that have perfectionistic tendencies that can never be obtained. I mean, plastic surgery is a really interesting industry. And he was just guiding my experience by saying, hey, you just have to relax. You just have to forget about it. And time again, I just wanted it to be perfect. You have this operation that costs $10,000. You just want it to be the way it looks in people's before and after shots. And it wasn't looking like that. And so I was like, uh-oh. But I'm so glad I did because I learned so many more lessons than just getting my stomach fixed. I got my heart
right.
fixed. Yeah.
Right. I was just going to say, actually, you didn't really need any fixing.
No.
You just needed somebody to help you transform some things that were going on, some junk that was stuck around your heart.
Absolutely.
Like.
Yeah.
And you had to go through this physical journey in order to have that lesson.
Yeah. It was such a blessing. So I just, if you feel like you need surgery in any way, shape or form, really tune in to whether you can just fully accept your body the way it is. And go with that if that works. Because it's a rough road. Like there's so many different toxic chemicals, from the anesthesia to the different types of pain medication and the inconvenience that it had on my life. And I don't know, it's just something I'm glad that I did, because now I can talk about it to inspire other people as well. That's why I didn't post my before and after shots. I've been very quiet about it. At first I was very public, like, oh, it's great. And then it's like, oh, this isn't so good. I couldn't sit up straight for 6 weeks. I was all hunched over like a little old lady, and I had a walker. And my husband, Sean, he looked after me for the first week. He was like changing my drains and emptying my catheter bag. And I was just completely incapacitated in a way that I didn't anticipate. But would I do it again? Yes, because of the spiritual lessons, not because of the physical outcome.
Going back to the beginning of the story, it sounds like you had accepted your body the way it was before you decided to do this. And I like what you said about, if you're thinking about having surgery, have you accepted how you are before you decide to go and do this? And And then, what is the reason? I've had other conversations with friends who've elected to have surgery. And I've had friends who've had surgery. Like, I've had girlfriends who've had breast augmentation
Mhm.
for what they consider, and what, from their stories they tell me, it sounds like were very empowering, positive reasons. I've had others who've had them done for reasons that they later looked back on and said, I didn't think I was enough, and I
Yeah.
had to do that because I didn't think I would ever be enough, and I didn't feel worthy. And now I'm having my breast implants removed because now I do accept
Yes.
myself, and now I want them removed. And this is such a personal journey.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
tummy tuck, her breast implants, her choice to do it, her choice not to do it. What do all of these choices have in common? They're personal choices, right?
Yeah.
They are not like, it's totally an individual decision, and the intention behind the decision, the reason behind the decision, seems to me to be the most important part of it all. And how
Mhm.
your body heals, how your body responds. I mean, all of that stuff. And like you said, you had a lot of complications with your surgery, and yet you still healed
Mm.
and feel much better now, and look back and say, hey, I would, if I had to do it all over again, I don't like all the pain, but the lessons were worth it.
Oh, I'd say that with anything. I'd say that with the 10-year marriage, anything that's happened, I would do it gladly if I knew what was waiting on the other side. And oh, it's such a interesting journey because it's not a weight loss journey. I think that's what a lot of people think, that hey, I could just go and get the fat sucked out of me, and because I had liposuction as well. And the bruising from that, and so the physicality is one thing, spiritual lessons is another, and then how it impacts the people that are closest to you.
Right.
So it's great. I could talk about this all day, and I guess I haven't spoken about it to anybody, so it's all
I'm
new.
very grateful that you took the time to explore it. I'm looking at page 37 of Dear Universe, and it's generous. The Buddha said that no true spiritual life is possible without a generous heart. Generosity aligns itself with an inner feeling of abundance, the feeling that we have enough to share and enough to give. And
Mhm.
that feeling of being enough and having enough, I mean, I feel like that's something that these are Sarah's words, by the way. This is from Sarah's book. I'm just reading her words to her, and now I'm going to ask her. And how does that resonate with you right now, like where you're at in your
with,
life?
with generosity,
Yeah.
that there's a much bigger picture at play. That I'm pretty sure she wouldn't mind me sharing this story. There's actually a few people that have shared a very similar story, so it's not just about one person. There was a woman who planned her death. She purchased what she was going to end her life with, and that was a Friday. And on the Saturday, she went to a bookstore and she got a copy of Dear Universe, and she read the emotional aspect to the book, which is giving yourself permission to feel however you're feeling and to not make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. And she's now one of my best students, which is great. So it's like thinking about how you can save lives, impact lives, and make them even more rich. Because I am not driven by money or finances. I'm more driven by impact. And so when I can see that that is where my generosity can thrive, because if I know it's going to help somebody, I will do whatever it takes to be there for somebody. That's really what fills me up. That brings my life meaning. And I know it does for you too, Brie.
That's part of the magical craft that we both share as sorceresses, right? That's what it is. It's about the impact. How can we do that magic in the world that makes a difference in somebody's life? Like, it's
Yeah.
100%. And I think when I think about all of the wonderful people, the wonderful guides who've helped me get where I am just so grateful to be a part of that
Mm.
continuous chain of love in the universe that helps other people, because I have been so helped, by in so many different ways at so many different times. And I think it's part of our human experience of generosity, of paying it forward, to have that
Mm.
opportunity. It's a gift to have that opportunity to serve, to give back.
It really is. And that is the key to abundance, which is what's weird about it when you don't
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, if you're of service to others and you make that part of your mission, then the abundance naturally comes. And I've
Mm.
seen this happen not just in my own life. I've seen it happen with you. I've seen it happen with dozens of other mutual friends and dear colleagues that we have, that the service is the purpose.
And I want to just say, it brings me to tears every night when I stand out on my balcony and clap and cheer for the healthcare workers along with
Yeah.
the rest of my city and think about people around the world doing the same thing, because the service these people are giving right now, the sacrifice
Definitely.
of their time, of their health, it's such a huge gift. And, we know that that generosity of the universe comes right back around.
Mhm.
It's all a beautiful gift. And I've watched so many nurses and doctors talk on television shows and programs about how, they're I'm here to hold your loved one's hand if
Oh,
you can't be here. And if it were my family, this is exactly how I would be. And I just see this beautiful humanity in these people who are just taking such care of these struggling people in very challenging conditions all over the world,
yeah.
wearing heavy gear in some places in the world that are, it's hot, must be hot to be in that, must be uncomfortable to move. And yet nothing stops these people, these heroes and heroines of our time, who are just putting themselves out there doing what they can do. And it's such a gift. So I just, want to say
Mm.
thank you. And I know we both feel this way, because it's just, we're
Oh,
getting emotional just talking
yeah.
about it. Like,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's lifting a veil. This virus is lifting a veil to what has already existed, because these healthcare workers, they do some of the most courageous things that you could ever imagine. I saw this when Ava, my youngest, was in hospital with RSV in early February this year. And she had to be in hospital for 2 nights. And I didn't sleep for 2 nights. They had like a little bed in the hospital, and the doctors and respiratory nurses would come in there, and they're placing themselves at risk. This isn't a new thing either. And it's amazing. There are so many beautiful angels out there in the world.
helpful, page 46 or number 46. Feeling helpful is engaging in the essence of service. This is a powerful element in the manifestation process. Constantly asking yourself how you can be more helpful is a way to spark more joy in your life and the lives of others. And I just love that, because Marie Kondo has become a verb for me. I'm like, did I
Love
just
her.
Marie Kondo that? Would I send you spark joy? Did what
Yes.
you experience spark joy? Because if it didn't, don't waste your time doing it. Don't waste your time on it. And being helpful is truly one of those things, I think, that so many people listening, I know you can relate to this, because you are so in service of others. As women, we are so often in service of others and want to be helpful. And
Absolutely.
yet there's this double-edged sword, isn't there, where sometimes we can be a little bit too much people pleasing. And
Yeah.
I just, what's the best way to find our boundaries when we're caught? Like, what's the way to know we need to set a boundary?
Mm.
What have you seen in your experience, like, that's made you feel like, oh crap, you know
Well, it's being inspired by you, Brie, because you are the queen of boundaries. You you are so good as a conscious leader to know what kind of a line to toe. You really are, and I've seen that in action several times, and I've just been like, tell me more, tell me everything you know, because I have been a chronic people pleaser my whole life. I like to be the person that makes other people feel happy and safe and all that kind of stuff, but at a cost. And now, as I'm getting older, I realize that it's too expensive. It's too much of an expensive transaction not to set very clear and firm boundaries and to speak the truth faster. This has been the ultimate magical recipe for success. Speak the truth faster. And my relationship with my husband has been so much better since being able to create that space rather than getting defensive, getting curious. Now we've spent a considerable amount of money on therapy and resources that have taught us these communication tools. So this is like something that you have to experience to fully embody. But boundaries are the best thing that you can do. Ask yourself, is this going to contribute to me, or is this going to contaminate me? And so quite often we put up with things that we shouldn't put up with. And we are the ultimate losers if that happens. And it's like the only person to blame is ourselves, because we should have spoken up sooner. Use your voice. It's so simple. Again, it's those simple things. Use your voice. If something feels funky, speak up.
Yes, I'm so grateful for you for speaking to that and addressing it. And thank you for your kind words. I grew up without the benefit of a lot of boundaries. And I think
Mm.
it's part of the reason that I am so aware of them now. Also, thanks to a lot of wonderful therapy and help from people that have shown up in my life that I have been so grateful to have helped me and guide me. But one of the clearest signs for me of that I haven't had good boundaries is feeling drained, feeling tired,
Oh, yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
like exhausted, or feeling short with people, and feeling like I don't want to say yes. I used to have a sign on my desk that just said nope, you know, and
Like,
now I actually I want that to be available to me at any time to say no
mm,
emphatically to the things that just don't feel right. If it's not a heck yes, it's a no.
yeah.
I very rarely do maybe because I just feel like, I saw you're fence sitting. And I think I just saw Oprah speak right before everything got crazy. And one of the things that she said was, you mentioned this earlier. I wanted to tell you, she talked about the whisper. And she said, if
Mm.
I don't listen to the whisper punches me in the face, it knocks me out, knocks me out.
So true. Oh my
Right?
god. Yeah,
Yeah. So boundaries are like that. If we don't set the boundaries early, we end up with a big crisis, right? We end up either
yeah.
being really sick, run down. We haven't taken care of ourselves. We've let people walk all over ourselves. And then if we're in victim, what happens? Well, we blame those people for running all over us, right?
Mhm.
And we need someone to save us from ourselves. We need the ice cream to make us feel better. We need
Yeah.
whatever it is to rescue us. But when we take that radical self responsibility to um, own that, we needed to
Mm.
set back, we needed to do the hard thing, which was to say no, or we
Yeah.
might disappoint someone. But at the same time, people will respect you. People will understand. They respect your time when you respect your time.
And then there's the phrase that I hear people say a lot. I don't know, maybe your listeners can relate to this. If they say no, then they say, "Oh, I feel bad for saying no. I feel
Oh,
bad for saying no." And it's like, come on, you're a grown up. You're allowed to say no. You can say
yeah.
it kindly. You can say it with consciousness. You can say it in a way where the recipient of the no will trust your intention isn't to harm them. I mean, that's the key. People think that they're going to be misinterpreted as being mean or misrepresented, and it's not true.
I think a good response to that, what I would say is that practice saying no to yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Do you need to say sorry to yourself for saying no? Do you? Do you really, like what you just said? Like, do you say, "Oh, I feel bad for saying no to myself, but I still need to say no"? Like, no, you don't do that. Practice saying no to yourself more often and in a loving way and with kindness, and it becomes easier and easier to say no when you need to other people, I
Oof.
think.
That is a double-edged sword because I think it gets rid of people's levels of shame too at the same time. If you can say no to yourself, then you don't have that playground of shame rise up where you need to eat that big bag of chips or that pizza, because so many people are trying to close that gap between themselves and the universe. I heard this great quote and I can't remember who said it. I think it was Mel Robbins, and she said that the opposite of addiction is connection. And it's like, wow, if we had that connection, then maybe, and we knew that we were safe, maybe it would be easier to say no. So say no to yourself. Say no to
Yeah.
drugs. Say no to
And if
drugs,
if
kids.
you're finding that it's hard to say no to yourself, I would explore that more deeply. I would journal into it. I would look more deeply into what is the compulsion, where is the compulsion coming from? And it's this brilliant man who writes about addiction, Gabor Mate.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yes,
Love
yes.
that
And
book.
he talks about a lot of addiction comes from trauma. A
Yeah.
lot of addiction is actually a response, a loop, a feedback loop. Try our body, ourself, trying to heal something that
Mhm.
hurts, something that's traumatic. And there's a lot of real wisdom in that
Mm.
conversation and in that exploration. So I feel like we're touching on things that we could have like 10,000 more conversations about. So I really hope that you'll come back to the podcast and talk to us again.
Love to.
And I can't even tell you, like Sarah and I could just talk for days,
And we have.
but we haven't seen each other in a long time. So it's like we're getting a chance to reconnect here, and we're so glad that you are listening in on this conversation because there's so many things that we talk about together that we might not talk about all the time ourselves. And I just share this precious gift of time with you. Thank you so much. And of course, we're going to put links to literally everything of you in our show notes and on our episode page, but what and how is the best ways for people to connect with you and resources that people can find of you? Anything that I haven't talked about yet?
Oh, I spend most of my time on Instagram. So Sarah Prout is my Instagram home, and sarahprout.com. That's pretty much it. That's where I blog articles. There's a lot of love that's gone into building that site.
It's a beautiful, beautiful site. Do you remember when you were first working on that site and I used to call you sarahprout.com? I didn't even call you Sarah.
I do remember. Hey, sarahprout.com.
Hi, sarahprout.com. And you'd like, what's up, thebettyrocker.com?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
sarahprout.com is an amazing resource. You can get Sarah's intention setting guide there. You can find her beautiful book, Dear Universe, and her new book that will be released. You'll be able to connect with her when that comes out, her amazing blog posts. And you can find links to her Instagram and social media and Facebook through that as well. If you're podcast listeners, you'll love Sarah's podcast. It's really great. And of course, Sarah herself is fantastic. If you ever get a chance to see her speak or her talk at an event, I know she's regularly posting about what she's doing on her social media, so you can keep connecting with her. So, Sarah, is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you would like to impart? Any last words that you would like to share with our listeners?
I would like to take this opportunity to honor you, Brie, for all of the work that you do in the world, and also the positive impact that you've had on my life and the levels of inspiration. You're such a dear soul sister, and I love you. And so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, what a gift. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, well, this has been wonderful, and I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rockstar. You can find all of the resources and links from today's show over on the show notes page at thebettyrocker.com/podcast. And please feel free to share this episode with someone who would find it inspiring. And thank you again for leaving your reviews for the podcast. It's very meaningful for me to read them. I'm really excited for next week's show. I'll be answering one of the top questions I get asked in great detail, which is, why am I not seeing the results I think I should be seeing? This one you won't want to miss, so stay tuned. Till next time, I'm Betty Rocker, and you are so awesome and amazing.
This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Brie Argetsinger, Betty Rocker Inc., and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. Before starting a new exercise, fitness, or health protocol, or if you think you have a medical problem, always consult a licensed physician.